Hey everybody, this week's episode of the R&R&R show is brought to you by Arcane Wonders and their new game, Age of Wonders Planetfall, which is a very cool, fast-playing card drafting engine building game where every round we're coming to a new planet that we are trying to conquer by grabbing cards. And the tricky thing is, on each planet, each player is only going to get to grab 2 cards. And it's always going to be a tough choice of to what to sacrifice and what to focus on because of big in-game objectives that everybody can be chasing after throughout the game. The other tricky thing is, depending on which card you grab, that could put you earlier or later in turn order for subsequent rounds. And that can add an extra level of complexity to the decision making as well. Now, this is a pretty smooth, fast-playing game. It's almost a Gateway Plus, and based on a very popular video game franchise. And if you'd like to know more about it, Shay has done a run-through. There's going to be a link for that down below, and also a link to the publisher's page if you'd like to know more about this month's sponsor, Age of Wonders Planetfall. And now, let's get on with the show.
And hello, friends. I was hitting my mic button and it wasn't coming on, but it is on now. Thank you, friends, so much for joining us. It's the R&R&R show. My name is Ruel Gaviola, joined, as always, by Chris and Ray, who is hanging out with us today. How's it going, friends?
Very good, Ruel. I'm very happy to be back and super excited to talk about Stonemaier. It's one of my consistently favorite publishers. They have some of my favorite games. I am very, very excited about our list today.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a fun list, and it's also, I love that this episode is sponsored by not Stonemaier but Arcane Wonders.
Yeah,
and that Arcane, it's just like such a wonderful representation of like publishers supporting publishers. I feel like the board gaming hobby is such like a lovely community, and you see that from like a publisher standpoint as well. I've always had really great interactions from a consumer standpoint with Arcane Wonders. I feel like I tell my customers my great customer service story about them all the time, where they just went above and beyond when they had Sheriff and some of my stuff wasn't working. It felt so good. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like another example of like, it's really cool that like publishers are just like, yeah, that's fine. Top 5 Stonemaier games. It's cool. Arcane Wonders. we like to build people up. So I just think that's like really cool and like a wonderful thing that you probably wouldn't see in a lot of other sort of industries as well.
Right. And Richard in the intro was talking about Planetfall, Age of Wonders Planetfall, and I want to show this off. It's on my table right now, folks. Now, I have not played the game yet, but I have it all set up on this wonderful playmat. And I really wanted to, I love, before we came on here, we do a pre-show, folks, and you can click on the show notes below to check out all the chit-chat that we do. Ray had mentioned the artwork in this, and this is, I mean, it's beautiful. Yes. I love this, and it's right there embedded into the playmat itself.
Yeah, no, I love this style. Style is not the right word, but I love the artistic choice to have a really dark background and then those pops of super bright colors. I don't know if it's just me. It makes me nostalgic for like Wise and otherwise, like that color scheme you don't see very often. And I love it. It's so distinctive and so unique, and you don't see it very often. It has a really beautiful table presence. And then, of course, in addition, that beautiful playmat that kind of draws it all together is totally stunning.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I was saying before that you saw in Shay's little run through that Shay had just like a little piece of cardboard, and you extend the cards out from that. Yep. And I'm really not a playmat person, but I saw this at PAX on the playmat, and I was like, oh yeah, it's also beautifully organized. Everything has its like little spot. Yep. And then when I was pulling out my own card, I was like, oh, but where's all the little spots for it? Where's all the nice little spots?
How do I know?
Right. It's one of those things where, like, when you're creating that sort of static tableau, it actually does feel really nice and sort of helps with the setup as well, which I appreciate. I appreciate playmats that like help to the functionality of the game and aren't just like a playmat for playmat's sake. Because I like. If that way I can justify it a little bit more. I'm like, okay, no, it actually sort of increases the functionality. It makes it easier to like lay things out and be organized for everybody looking at it. Furnace's playmat is very, very similar to that functionality aspect as well. Also by Arcane Wonders.
Another Arcane Wonders game, yes.
It's like one of the few deluxeified bits that actually I can justify as well. I'm never a deluxeifier normally, but playmats are so nice. It just helps with accessibility of getting it to the table. It's fewer things you'd have to like look up and double check. end.
Yeah.
And also be really helpful for new players who are visual to see where things are supposed to go and how they stack up and stuff. Super helpful.
Exactly. And yeah, I'm a sucker too for a good playmat. So again, thanks to our sponsor, Arcane Wonders. But now let's talk about some Stonemaier games. We're talking about our top 5 folks.
Let's do it.
Like Ray, Stonemaier is one of my favorite companies. I seem like I always enjoy their games. But we're going to talk. We've narrowed it down to our top 5. It was a pretty tough call here, but why don't we get to it? Who's got our number 5? Is that you?
I think it's me.
Chris,
I don't know
what you got for our number 5, my friend?
I think it's me. And if something else pops up, I'm just going to take credit for it, as I like to do. And somebody else can roll with it on the fly for my pick.
Yes.
My number 5, though, I feel like very excited to get this number 5 pick because I feel like I get to pick sort of a little bit of an outlier. You know what I mean? I feel like there's the hits I expect to see, but this one, I was really torn between a lot of them to put it into this pick. But my pick is Rolling Realms.
Nice.
Rolling Realms by Stonemaier, which was like a pandemic game. It was really a pandemic game. It has evolved into this like really cool thing. There you get 3 realms. And they'll be shuffled up. They'll be different each game. The combinations will be different. And then on your turn, you roll 2 dice and you take those numbers and you can put them into some of the realms, but you can only put them into 2, right? And so each of the realms has its own little mini game of things you're trying to complete to get points, but you can also get resources that you can spend to chain into another realm. And so the way they all interact with each other is really fun. Really fun, a solid roll and write, a solid price as well. Easy to play with a ton of people as long as, they had the cards or whatever. And just like a really lovely addition. I love its story too, that it started out as just like a pandemic game. We want to be able to play games while we weren't able to be around each other. And so, I like it a lot. It's a top roll and write for me, and is great. And it's not what I kind of forgot about it because I think it was not my typical Stonemaier thinking. And then I was looking through the list. I was like, oh, Rolling Realms. Of course, that's my pick.
Yeah. I love this game, and you're right. I love the story behind it. As started in the pandemic, and it became a real thing. And this is, folks, if you haven't seen this before, Richard and I actually played this live here on the channel, and you can go to the link in the show notes, and you can play along with us and see how you fare against the dice that we rolled. I love that the dice are like so huge and just ginormous. It's just a fun little component there. But yeah, such a wonderful roll and write.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with what Goblin said. Goblin said, good choice. Not that there are any bad choices. Truly, Stonemaier is one of those publishers where I'm like, I have not disliked any game that they've put out. So that's a great option. I feel like I kind of missed out on Rolling Realms. I didn't get into roll and writes until somewhat recently. So my great shame is I actually haven't played it. I only got into roll and writes like a little over a year ago. I was a terrible elitist for a long time of like, I'm in this hobby for collecting. What am I going to do? Collect paper? Like I was so not into roll and writes for such a long time. So it's one of the few Stonemaier games I actually haven't played. So maybe this will inspire me to go back and give it a shot.
Super good.
It's so great. Right? Yeah. If you like roll and writes, I think this is one of those games that you should have in your collection because it's so it's just so robust and so great. Yeah. So, all right. That's our number 5. And Ray, you got a number 4 for us.
I do. All right. So I want to reiterate, this was hard for me. I really like Stonemaier games. There's so many good ones, and I wanted to say Apiary, but I haven't played enough Apiary to put it on this list. So I ultimately decided on Wingspan because it had to be on this list somewhere.
Yeah,
and I love Wingspan so much. I don't think it needs an introduction. But by some chance, if you have stumbled upon this video and you were like, birds, huh? What's this game? Let me briefly explain to you.
They just found it through their bird perching. It's true.
Yeah. So Wingspan is a beautiful engine building game about collecting birds and designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. You're going to be collecting various types of birds and placing them in one of 3 habitats. You've got this tree canopy area up at the top, you've got this grassland area in the middle, and then you have water at the bottom. And you're going to be slotting these birds into these different habitats depending on those birds' real life habitats, which pin in that scientific accuracy. We'll get back to it. And then that's how you're going to be building your engine. We had been discussing the last couple of weeks about like best engine builder games and whatever. And that's a really hard mechanism to define. But Wingspan's one of the few games where I'm like, this really distills what engine building is. It's a really clean and simple engine builder. It's one of the reasons why I love it. But the way you're going to be building your engine is by placing those birds into those different habitats. And those different habitats are also going to correspond to the major actions that you can take in the game. So for example, if you want your birds to lay eggs, you're going to go to the grasslands to lay eggs. And then the fun part is when you go to do that, you also, generally speaking, activate most of the birds that you've placed in your grassland. So as you're playing birds, it increases the power of those various actions that you need to take to play the game. And I picked Wingspan as my choice for this list for two main reasons. One is just the undeniable impact that this game had on the hobby. You can say you don't like Wingspan. You're wrong. That's fine. You're allowed to be wrong, but you cannot deny the incredible impact that this game had on the industry and on this space. For kind of anecdotally, I was in college when Wingspan came out, and I was an earth science major. So I was in with all like the crunchy granola naturey kids, none of whom had ever showed any interest in a board game prior. And all of a sudden Wingspan comes out and I'm walking into the cafeteria and I literally saw 4 kids from my class sitting down playing Wingspan. And it reached corners that I feel us as a hobby and as an industry, we're struggling to reach for the longest time. And there's layers to that. So like my initial layer that I saw was like the academic people, right? People who have that sort of puzzly brain, but maybe never thought to pick up a board game. They didn't like them as a kid and then they forgot about them. Wingspan, because it is scientifically accurate, it has this nature, beautiful sciencey theme behind it. That got a lot of those folks into the game. And then if you step out another step, the theme itself is soft and beautiful. It doesn't have a gray palette. It's not about trains. It's not about war. It's not about a lot of those themes that our hobby gets stereotyped as being like, that's all it is, right? I want to be very clear to say, like, it's not that soft, beautiful themes haven't always existed, but there was some perfect storm about Wingspan where it was for many people the first game that they saw that had that kind of soft, beautiful theme. And then even one layer further than that, it was also for a lot of people the first game that they saw that had a prominent woman designer. So there are all these, it was just this multiple layers of reaching people who have grown to love this hobby, but that we were struggling to reach for a really long time. And you can't knock Wingspan for that amazing impact that it had on the hobby. And then the second reason I picked it is because I love it. I've probably played this game maybe more than any other like strategy game because I can get it to the table so easily. So many, again, as I mentioned during the pre-show, I spent a lot of time playing board gamers with like non-gamers or people who are only like got half a foot in the hobby. And Wingspan is such an easy game to get to the table. It's got gorgeous production value. I, again, come from a science background, so I really appreciate the theme. From a mechanical perspective, I love that you can kind of go all in on one specific strategy. Like, obviously, you need to balance it a little bit, but I resent games that make me do everything equally. I don't like that. Let me just lay eggs for like 3 rounds and see how many points I can get. I like that if you get the right cards, you can have these ridiculous games where you're stacking so many water birds that it's like an inch thick. I like that it gives you that opportunity. And then, of course, the 3 expansions for this game are top-notch, incredible expansions. I love all of them. There's 3, right? I think there's 3. Oceania, Asia. Okay, I'm making sure I got that number right. Yep. 3 are what I own. They're all really, really good. Amazing 2-player expansion with Asia came out. And it also has one of my favorite digital implementations of a board game ever. I'm like solidly in board games and video games as like my 2 favorite hobbies. And I love when they kiss, when they come together in a beautiful way. It's amazing on Switch. It's like my favorite airplane game ever to pass and play while you're like traveling. Yeah. I love Wingspan. It's so good. If you somehow again have stumbled upon this video, you haven't at least looked into Wingspan, you should do it for yourself as like, it's one of those pillars of this hobby, right? That just stands as this benchmark that you should at least owe it to yourself to look into and see if you'd like it.
Agreed.
Yeah. That's my long-winded rant about Wingspan. Sorry, I could talk about this game all day. I love it so much.
And rightfully so. I think it's great that you hit on the cultural impact of this game, right? I mean, we're all deep in the hobby, but we sometimes forget not everyone is, but then you see something like Wingspan when it took off. I mean, it really took off. I mean, we saw this on like the Wall Street Journal's front page, and stuff like that. And we saw Hollywood celebrities, trying to figure out the rules.
Mandy Patinkin playing Wingspan lives rent free in my head forever.
Love it.
I love that so much.
And on top of that, it's a solid game. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yep.
It deserves all that praise. Like there's some perfect storm of marketing and timing, but for whatever reason, that game took off. And again, I want to be clear, like games designed by women with like beautiful themes, like those have existed for a long time, but there's something about Wingspan, it took off. And like we are better as a hobby because that game took off and brought new people into the space. So
agreed.
I think that's super cool. I like that.
Awesome.
Agreed with everything.
Yes. Okay, so that was our number 4. Let's go on to number 3. This is going to be my choice, and I struggle a little bit with my top 3, but they sometimes, depending on my mood, they would change. But honestly, this is the one that's always been my number 1 in my heart. It is a fantastic worker placement game. The theme is money, and folks, if you haven't played it, please give it a shot. It's viticulture. I love everything about this game, starting from the theme. I mean, you are sending your workers out to the vineyards and you're making wine, stomping on the grapes, I Love Lucy style, and then, filling orders and just doing all the things that a good winery would do. My bucket list item in my life, I still want to play viticulture at a winery. I'm getting close, but one of these days I will play it there. It's a wonderful worker placement game where you placing workers, doing the things, and gathering resources in order to make that wine, and you're going to draw cards to help you fill orders and whatnot. And I think the really cool thing about this, it introduced, or I don't know if it introduced, but it was like really innovative as far as that grande worker, like the big workers. So in a lot of workers placement games, you're going to get blocked out of certain spots, right? That never feels good, but back in the day, that's just the way it was. However, with the grande worker, as long as you have that worker, you haven't placed it yet, you can go to any spot you want and take that action. I mean, it's just one little tweak like that. Really, I mean, I remember when I first played, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not blocked out. This feels great. I can still fill an order. I can still get grapes stomped or whatever. It's an awesome game. And then you introduce the expansion to it. So a lot of my gamer friends, they play heavier stuff, so they always want to play with Tuscany, the expansion of this. And I love Tuscany as well. It introduces more elements, some special type of workers, adds another spot buildings that you can build, and also adds a sort of like area control map that you can go on. I love Tuscany as well. I think if you're looking for a deeper experience, a more complex experience, that's for you. But I'm fine playing either one because I love everything about this game. What you're seeing right now on screen, that's Richard playing the original Viticulture. Which has basically been replaced by Viticulture Essential Edition. It took some of the things from the other, some of the expansions, wove it into the game, and just made it a perfect experience. You started with your starting resources and whatnot through the Mama and Papa cards. Folks, if you haven't played this, play it. It is an all-timer for me, and that's why it's our number 3 on our combined list of Stonemaier Games Viticulture.
I love Viticulture. I might have said this if I didn't know you were going to say this, because gun to my head, I typically say Viticulture is my favorite game because I love a thematic worker placement, and I also love the way this game like ramps up. I love how it feels so slow at the beginning, and then before you know it, it's over. I love games that really nail unique pacing like that, and I love the theme. Viticulture is so good.
It is.
I really love. I'm not a solo player. I've only played it at Tuscany too, but I've read through the solo rules set, and I just love the idea of every turn of those 7 turns, you get the different beginning bonus of the round, right? Like that's how it manipulates the turn order and incorporates it into the solo mode, that you can only use each one of the turn order bonuses once. I think that's like really, really clever and slick. And it makes me excited. I'm like, maybe I am a solo gamer now. Maybe I will. Maybe I will.
Yes, join us, Chris. Join
Identity
us.
crisis.
Is that me? I think it might be.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the solo variant in this game was created by the Automa factory, and that's how it started. Was with Viticulture. Automa or I don't know if Atoma or whatever. I don't know how to pronounce
Yeah,
it.
I say
I've never known
Automa.
how to say it. You're
Yeah.
a braver man than me. I would not have
thank
tried
you.
to say it out loud because I don't know how to say it either.
But yeah, it's based on, I believe, the Italian word for like solo game or whatever. It's because it started with viticulture,
Very
and
cool. I
it
didn't
basically
know that.
launched the company, the Automa or Atoma factory. And you know,
Cool.
I love solo gaming, and I've played through the solo campaign for the original, but I have not yet played Viticulture World. That is on my shelf of opportunity. I cannot
me
wait
neither.
for that. So that's a cooperative version. But yeah, I'm so glad to see some love for viticulture. And Ray, I'll confess, like it really went back and forth for me, viticulture or a Wingspan. So one of us was going to
There we
end up
go.
talking
We
about
found
it.
the perfect compromise. I knew
Totally.
it. It was going to be going back and forth with
Yep.
the two of us, so
Totally.
it worked out.
Okay. Speaking of the let's go on to number 2. We've got Richard join us. This time, Richard's not doing our number 1, folks. He's got our number 2, and let's see what he's got for us.
Hey gang, here I am in beautiful Mexico. There's the rig behind me, charging up for the day. There's the Sea of Cortez in the other direction, although the tide is out right now, but it'll be coming in soon, and maybe we'll be getting some windsurfers later on. Anyway, oh my gosh, I love this topic because Stonemaier Games is easily one of my favorite publishers, and Jamey Stonemaier is easily one of my favorite designers. What have you talked about so far? Chris, Rolling Realms, I love it. I recently got to play the first 3 of the little mini expansions, and they were so good, I want to get all of them and just keep playing that game forever. Wingspan, of course, is, that's my number 2. In fact, folks, if you stick around to the post show, I'm going to be doing a rapid fire top 10, my personal countdown of my 10 favorite Stonemaier published games. But Wingspan is actually my personal number 2. And you know what? If I ever get a chance to play the Asia co-op mode, that might push it into my personal number 1 spot. Viticulture, Ruel, I'm not surprised at all. And man, I have to say, I love Viticulture World. That expansion so elevates the game. It's absolutely amazing. But my personal favorite Stonemaier game, well, I'll tell you right now, it's definitely not Scythe. Actually, I've played almost every single game. Scythe is one of the ones I haven't because Jamey himself told me, do not play it. You will not like it. It is not for you. Someday I do still think I should try the Rise for Fenris expansion because it turns at co-op. Although, again, Jamey told me, don't do it. You got to play the basic game before you play. Anyway. It's neither here nor there because my personal favorite is Tapestry. Oh man, this game is so brilliant. The second best civilization game of all time, as far as I'm concerned. Some people think it's a little abstract. I do not feel that way at all. I love the way history comes together in a beautiful tapestry of super powerful tapestry cards. The game has so much replayability. There are so many cool special effects, but the engine that drives everything is so clean and pure and fast playing. Also, not for nothing, it has an amazing solo mode from Morten Monrad Peterson of the Automa Factory, like pretty much all Stonemaier games, and I've really enjoyed that over the years as well. Tapestry is just so next gen, so next level. It's Jamey's greatest design of all time, and like I said, the second best civilization game of all time as well. Although I just played Age of Civilization the other day, so Tapestry might be dropping to number 3 on that list, but it's my personal number 1 Stonemaier game. But I think the list isn't quite done yet, right?
Tapestry, folks. Excellent game. What a choice. This was on my top 5 as well. It didn't make it quite to my number 1, but I love Tapestry. Taking that, just big game and being able to do, things on just these little tracks and moving up the tracks. It's so much fun. But yeah, I enjoyed Tapestry. It was no surprise that Richard put Tapestry there. I figured as much. But yeah, I can't wait to play it again. I've actually played it solo, and it's got this really cool way where you can play with extra AIs and stuff. I always like that as well. So, Chris is a new solo player. We're going to get him to play Tapestry as well, right, Chris?
There we
As a new
go.
solo
Newly
player,
minted, self-identified solo player.
I guess that's it. I am the bastion for the solo board gaming hobby from here on out.
Nice.
What can I
They
say?
have chosen you as their champion.
It just happened. These things just happen to me. I don't know how it works, but it just happens.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think we have our special guest waiting in the wings, Ruel. If you want to bring him in,
We're gonna.
I see him backstage on Twitch, so we're gonna bring Jamey in right now.
Yeah, we've got our top 5. We've done 4. Richard did number 2, so we've got a special guest, Jamey Stonemaier, join us right now to reveal the number 1 Stonemaier game of all time. So give us just a second. We're gonna bring him in.
We're back. We're here with Jamey Stonemaier. Welcome to the show, Jamey, and we're excited to hear your number 1, or at least the number 1 game that you might want to play with us right now, right? I'm sure it's very hard for you to pick through all of your darlings, but we got to make a definitive list somehow and give you the honorary top number 1 spot. So thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored that you all decided to talk about Stonemaier Games today. It was a dream come true, really. Yeah.
We were all very happy to talk about them, and we grumbled a lot pre-show about how genuinely difficult it was for us all to pick one
100%.
Singular game. I think I actually punched Ruel over picking Viticulture. It got violent.
Yeah, I'm
Ruel
still
is permanently injured.
Yeah, I'm still feeling it right on my chin. It was before Ray hit me, I used to have a full head of hair, so that's how hard she hit me.
Before Ray hit me.
It was quite the shock to see,
right?
Yeah, it's wild.
But
truly, Stonemaier is one of my favorite publishers. Someone mentioned it in chat in the pre-stream that when Chris made his pick, they were like, good pick. Not that there is a bad one. I cannot think of a Stonemaier game that I haven't thoroughly and genuinely really, really enjoyed. So this is just a very self-indulgent list of which is my favorite of all the games that I already really enjoy. And it's such a treat and such a pleasure to have you join us for this list.
Agreed.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm really flattered and honored to hear that. We put a lot of love into our games. We have 16 so far. So for you all to even have tried enough to make a top 5 list is amazing to me. Thank you so much.
Do we want to? Yeah, go ahead, Ruel.
I was just gonna say, let's get to it. So as y'all saw in the first couple of picks here, we had Rolling Realms at number 5, Wingspan at number 4, Viticulture number 3, and Tapestry at number 2. So Jamey, let us know, what is the number 1 Stonemaier game?
Well, this is a small preface. This is always the most difficult question for someone to answer, including me, if you do put a lot of love into your designs and your publications, and I help develop all of our games. And so my initial answer was a 16-way tie for all of our games. But we added a few constraints, like 5-player game, although most of our games do play 5 players, except for Smitten, so that didn't help all that much. But then we added the twist of what would I play with the 5 of you, or the 4 of you specifically, a 5-player game with the 4 of you. Mm-hmm. That helped out a lot, because something that I heard right when I came on, Richard is a little infamous for not having played Scythe, or as far as I know, he has not played Scythe yet. Yeah. And so I would love to sit down and play Scythe with all of you and Richard, and have a non-combat-y experience of Scythe, where we have the threat of combat, but it doesn't actually happen all that much, which is what happens in Scythe. And we can all be Care Bears together, and that would bring me a lot of joy. So I'm going to pick Scythe, and not necessarily really as my number 1 game, but my number 1 game to play at this moment with the 4 of you, especially Richard.
Nice.
Because of that reason.
Yeah, it's a great pick. And Scythe was actually my number 1 choice a couple of years ago when it first came out. But then I realized, I'm a little more into wine rather than mechs, and so I'm sticking to Viticulture. But again, like we've said throughout the show, any one of these could have been a number 1, and I think this would be a really fun one to play with you, Jamey, Chris, Ray, and Richard. Even though Richard's the Care Bear of the group, I would target him first, of course. But no,
oh my God, of course.
Let's all gang up on Richard. I think we can agree, because he's not here. All of our attacks are going straight for Richard.
Totally. Chris, I know this is your type of jam right here, Chris. Any thoughts?
I'm really excited. My friend and neighbor actually I haven't played Rise of Fenris yet, and so my friend and neighbor just got his hands on Rise of Fenris, and so I'm super stoked to be able to dive. And I've managed to avoid spoilers, which is incredible to me. Mm-hmm. That I've managed to avoid not knowing what's going to happen in that campaign, and so I'm so excited to see Scythe go to the next level. What I really like about Scythe, and again, Scythe was in competition for my slot on this list for sure. I really love the action efficiency, right? That when I realized that it was all about that efficiency of actions, I feel like I heard you speak about the number of actions it can take to win in one of your videos or something, like it was something along those lines of 14 to 17 or in that ballpark, and I was like, that blew my mind open. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get really good at Scythe, and just like trying to work out that puzzle and working against that sort of internal clock against what everybody else is doing, I find so fascinating. And I love the upgrading the systems. I always go for an upgrade objective just because it feels so good to complete everything. And I love the asymmetry of the boards and just exploring this landscape. I think it's so fun. I think it's a banger of a game. And everybody says that Rise of Fenris makes it even better, and that seems impossible to me. So I'm really excited to check that out personally. Yeah, Ray, what about your experiences with Scythe?
I think I fall into a similar category with you, where I enjoy just getting the popularity. And yeah, no, I adore Scythe. For all the crap that I gave you, I think I approached the game very similarly. And it was one of those games that for me was like the big leap into like real hobby games for me. Again, when Scythe came out, I was like around college age, and that was like all the buzz in all of our games groups of like, oh, have you gotten Scythe yet? We pooled all of our money together to buy a copy of Scythe for our board gaming group. So it's a very nostalgic title for me.
I love that, as a group getting a game like that. As you see, friends, the video we're watching is actually Jamey's video of Scythe. And normally we do our list of games and we say bye to y'all, but we're not going to do that this time. We're going to hang out with Jamey for a few minutes here and chat with him, get to know him a little better. And the video that we just saw, Jamey, for pretty much from the get-go, once you started Stonemaier, you've been a content creator as well, not just a publisher, but a content creator, creating videos, writing. Like, I loved all the blogs that you did as far as Kickstarter and stuff. How do you balance that with being a publisher, Jamey? How do you have the time and the energy to do all that?
Well, that's a good question. I don't always balance it as well as I should. I try, because I do 2 blog entries a week, and I try to limit the time I spend on them to around 30 to 45 minutes. But it often stretches out beyond that. Like either it takes longer to write, or the comments are particularly active in that post. And then I'm talking on Facebook about the comments, and then on our blog in the comments. And I enjoy it. I get a lot from those conversations. And so I think it ends up being worth the time. But I have to sometimes restrain myself a little bit, or constrain myself. And then with the videos, I started those, you're right, a while ago, maybe even slightly before Scythe, around maybe 2014, because I love talking about games. And I see how much fun you all have talking about games. I feel the same way. I love to talk about them, but I didn't want to review them because I didn't want to critique my peers in that same way. Even if I don't love a game, I know how much work and time and effort and love went into it from the designer. And so I realized I could talk about just my favorite thing about a game, my favorite mechanism, with the hope of maybe inspiring myself as I talk about it and inspiring other designers to use whatever my favorite thing about that game is, and just to highlight other games I love. So that, unfortunately, I found a way that doesn't take much time. I don't do any entity, and I just turn on the camera and talk for a few minutes about a game that's specifically my favorite thing. So that doesn't take much time at all.
Yeah, that actually goes very well on theme about what we were talking about at the start of the stream about publishers supporting other publishers. Like just the fact that this is a stream sponsored by Arcane Wonders and we're talking about Stonemaier Games the entire time. That it's such a beautiful thing to give to this hobby, that series where you pick up other games and sometimes lesser known games and talk about why you love them, and you lend your platform to that space is really, really commendable. And we really appreciate it.
I think that's it, right? Like I particularly I found you as a content creator talking about other board game mechanics, and I think that's just such like a wonderful meld of like Arcane Wonders sponsoring the Stonemaier list and that sort of thing. We should shout. I asked you in our little break what your favorite Arcane Wonders is. I can list off a bunch of their games if you're interested. If you don't have one off the top of your head, they have stuff like World Wonders, Neotopia, Air, Land, and Sea, Aquatica, Smartphone Inc., which I still need to play, Furnace, which I just played recently, Picture Perfect, Onitama, Viral, Mage Wars. Man, they got a lot of stuff. So does Stonemaier.
They do. I would say my top 3 from Arcane Wonders right now would be Air, Land, and Sea, which I really
so
love.
Good. That's such a classic.
The tug of war, and Aquatica would definitely be up there. I really love Aquatica.
Nice.
And what was the third one? The Sheriff of Nottingham, which I haven't played in a while, but That we had many great games of that. Just popping open that little package to see what someone else has given you.
Yeah.
Those are probably my top 3.
That's a classic.
Nice.
This is going to be a really random little tangent, but I just have to tell this story super quickly. My mom is a big board gamer, and she loves to make like life-size versions of games. And I have played like a real-life version of Sheriff of Nottingham, where you had like she would give you padding and stuff to pad out your bag, but we were throwing apples and like rubber chickens in bags and stuff. So whenever I think of Sheriff of Nottingham, I think of that. But yeah, no, those are great picks for Arcane Wonder games.
All classics. And I just realized, Ray, I want to play games with your mom. That sounds so fun.
Yeah, she rules. She's the best.
That's awesome.
I credit her for like this whole hobby that I have now, because she's been on it. I like to say she has something like a 15-year-old Board Game Geek account. She was an OG.
She's into it.
I don't know if that, maybe BGG hasn't even been around that long, but she's been around for a very long time in the space. So yeah,
very cool.
But this isn't a game. This isn't a stream talking about my mom.
I know. Speaking about, I do have a question in terms of like evolving in the space. I know that you've talked a lot about, Jamey, about crowdfunding in particular, and the differences that have happening. You started a little bit on crowdfunding, and even like your content creation, I feel was from those blogs about like how to crowdfund a game. I mean, like there's still very searchable things, and so I'm wondering how if you wanted to talk about like that journey of going into crowdfunding and then the decision to not use it anymore, not need it anymore, and what those sort of decisions were. I think that would be that's something I'm personally quite interested in.
Yeah. And Scythe, the game that I talked about today, was the last game that we had on crowdfunding on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
That was in 2015, coming up on almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
It's so Stonemaier Games would not exist without crowdfunding, without Kickstarter. I want to put that out there. But I do like our current method a little bit more than what we used to do, and it's evolved over time. But what it's evolved into is that these days, instead of crowdfunding a new game, we put all the time and effort and resources and money and love into making the game. And then when it arrives at our fulfillment centers, or when it's almost there, that's when we announce it. So we kind of keep it secret until then. And then we announce it, hopefully to a lot of excitement, certainly to our excitement. And we reveal it. We talk about it. I unveil it kind of in a design diary style way over the course of around 2 weeks. And then a few weeks later, we put it on our web store, and we already have it in stock. And so we can start shipping it right away to people. The core idea is to instead of having like a 1-year gap between when someone pays for something and gets excited about something, and then when they actually receive it, it's maybe a few weeks. And I've really enjoyed that. I don't mind when a surprise comes up. Like, I still back a lot of things on crowdfunding, and I like when they surprise me by showing up at my door. That's fun.
Yep.
But every now and then when I hear about a new game and I'm really excited about it, and I can just buy it and have it within a few days and then get it to the table while I'm still really, really excited about it, I love that. So we try to do that with all of our games.
That's awesome. That's something that like I feel I spend a lot of time in the crowdfunding sphere, and you do feel that gap, right? Sometimes it's more than a year, it's 2 years, and then but being able to just capitalize on that excitement, be like, hey, yeah, we got the thing. We know it's an amazing game, and you can have it right now. That feels so exciting to me. Yeah. I didn't realize it was that early. Like you had all the stock in your warehouses, but that makes sense in terms of being able to ship it out effectively.
Yeah, I think it removes a lot of uncertainty too, because I would say most crowdfunding creators, when they schedule ahead, they're hopeful that they'll have it within 6 months, maybe 8 months. But it's just a hope at that point. You don't really know what's going to happen with manufacturing and pre-production and freight shipping and fulfillment. It's all uncertain until it's actually in the warehouse ready to ship. And so we kind of take all that uncertainty. We take it out. It's not a factor anymore. We wait until we have that certainty and can actually ship it. But I will say that we are in a privileged position to be able to do that. I understand the many different value elements that crowdfunding brings to a variety of creators, big and small. And I'm not bemoaning that. I like that we're able to use the system that we have now.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to pivot just a little bit, because I feel like you've gained this reputation as this not arbitrator, but this bringer of knowledge of the production process, right? But you're also, as you mentioned earlier, you're actively involved in the design process for all these games, or the development process. And I love talking to designers about the playtesting process, because I feel like that's such an interesting point in that journey. And I was wondering if, off the top of your head, if you happen to have a really memorable playtesting experience, an opportunity, like an encounter with a playtester that really taught you something, or that maybe you realized something about one of your games that you might not have if you hadn't thoroughly, tested all your games in that kind of setting.
I love the specificity of that question.
Sorry if it's too specific.
No,
you can
it's great.
broaden it and take it however you want, but
no, I like how those, one of my favorite things about games are those memorable moments that stand out, whether it's in the design process or when you're playing the final game. One that does come to mind, partially because I've shared this anecdote before, but it really is a good one, because I love positive player interaction in games. Absolutely. I love when that happens. I love designing around it, but sometimes I just stumble into it. And it happened with Euphoria. So this is one that happened a while ago, but I do really enjoy it, where it was a moment in Euphoria. You have these markets that you can build by yourself. You can invest in harder to get resources in the game and put multiple dice on a market and construct it by yourself. But the first time I kind of thought that's how players would do it in the game when we were playtesting. I thought, okay, why would I let someone else help me construct a market if I could just do it myself? But testing it, I put a worker down on a construction site, or someone did at the table. I can't remember who it was. It was a long time ago. And then someone else did it as well. And as they did it, they looked across the table at someone else and said, hey, can you help me complete this? Because when you complete a market, you get your dice back, you get your workers back in Euphoria. And it was this moment of unexpected collaboration with the other players that felt really good. And it was one of those moments where we were actually like looking at each other in the eyes across the table, like, oh, I see you have this resource. You can help out with this in this moment. Yeah. It felt really good. There have been a few moments like that over the years, but that one definitely stands out.
That's amazing. I love that.
That is so cool. And I'm glad you brought up Euphoria, because I was trying to figure out a way, how can I bring up Euphoria into this conversation? I'm glad you did it, Jamey, because that was the very first Stonemaier game I'd ever played. I got into the hobby in 2015, and like anyone, I started with Ticket to Ride, like many people did, and I started going to my local gaming meetup, and I had no idea what was going on. And literally the game before that we had played Carcassonne. I'm like, okay, I know the Carcassonne's great, and then we played Euphoria, and my mind was just blown. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much cool stuff. I mean, look at the board. I'm like, there's just so much, and I realized then, I was like, I like this type of gaming. I like modern board games. This, like, it challenged me, but in a way that I wanted to play more. And I'll never forget that experience. And Euphoria, actually, folks, if you stick around if you click on the links below, we have a post show that we're going to do, extended edition, where we talk about games that didn't make lists. But Euphoria was on my top 5 for sure. So thank you for sharing that. I love that story. It's so great.
Well, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm honestly glad it didn't scare you off, because Euphoria is probably the toughest teach of any of our games. Yeah. It's one of these games where, like, to understand action A, you also have to understand action B and C and maybe action D, which is really daunting for a teach. And so I love that you were open to that.
I was very fortunate. The gaming group that I got involved with, they were very welcoming and very good about teaching games. So I was able to get through, and they taught in a way just where I was able to understand it really, really, really quickly. And I was going to say, maybe it's because I'm so smart that I was able to figure out right away. But no, it was.
That's probably it. Yeah. I think that's
the teach was great.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
Jamey, I am curious in terms of, like, this sort of overarching, your overarching publishing experience. Like, what sort of things have you learned, and how has your sort of philosophy changed and evolved as you've been in the industry for such a long time now, over the 16 games?
Yeah. 16 games, 11 years. It has changed quite a bit, because originally the first 5 years of it was just crowdfunding. We put something out of crowdfunding. We dabbled a little bit with retailers and distribution. Our main marketing outlet is still, it was much smaller back then, but it is still reviewers. Sending out, I send out a ton of review copies every month and every year of a wide variety of games and expansions. So not just the newest thing, but also going back. I still send out review copies of Viticulture, which originally released in 2013. Because I'm in the hobby all the time. People are curious about games all the time. I want them to have our games come up in their feeds, but also to have them informed to see if someone might want to discover a new game. Maybe they'll discover their new favorite game. And so we send out a lot of review copies. That's a big part of it. And with conventions having returned, we also send out a lot of games to conventions for their play and win sections in particular. It's a system used at a convention here called Geekway to the West in St. Louis, where you all have probably seen it at a convention, but you check out a game from the library, and then you have a chance of winning that game, all the games that you played, or any of the games that you played at the end of the convention. I think it's like a win-win-win for the publisher of the convention and the attendees. And so we lost that for like the first year of the pandemic, but we got it back, and I love that type of exposure for our games at conventions.
Cool. And just finding that sort of shifting marketing, making sure that it's out there, that people are talking about it, and front of mind.
Yeah.
Cool.
I saw someone in the question ask about Wingspan. Goblin says, Wingspan was a massive hit, luck being part of that. Do you think a game about bees, they say would hit, I'm going to say will hit as much as a game about birds.
Yeah.
Wingspan is certainly an anomaly. Like, I don't know if we'll ever have a game sell as well as Wingspan, but I do have Apiary, our bee game, right next to me.
Yeah.
And this game has delighted me from the first time I played it, and I had a blast working with Connie. Connie put so much amazing ideas into this game, and it was really fun to develop with her. So I don't think any game is going to take off the way that Wingspan did, but I hope that people who are open to worker placement games and want something a little bit more complex than Wingspan are open to trying it. And I love what the space theme adds to it. I know that might be a turnoff for some people, but I like that part of it. It sounds like you all have tried it, or yeah.
Yeah, I love Apiary. I'm a big worker placement person, and the idea of the timer slowly ticking down on those bees is just so, it's so wonderful. It's so charming. The board is gorgeous. Oh, I was so pleasantly surprised and delighted by Apiary. It's in a serious contender for possibly my game of the year. I need to play it a couple more times. I have like 2 weeks left before I have to decide, but I really was really pleasantly surprised by Apiary. And I'm tangential friends with Connie, so I heard a little bit about her process of coming out with that game and her, kind of rise to stardom as this just breakout designer with such an amazing hit. And I'm curious sort of how you found Connie. I don't know actually much about how you find the designers for the games that you publish, if you're willing to share what that process looks like.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We have a submission form on our website where people can kind of fill out a form to see the types of games that we're looking for, to see if what they have meets what we're looking for. Connie, I can't remember if Connie did that. I think she did that, but I met Connie because she came to a little playtesting event that we host every year called the Stonemaier Games Design Day. It's kind of like an unpub proto spiel type event, but it's just one day.
It's a thing.
Yeah, we do it every year in like September, October. And Connie brought an early version of Apiary or early for us. I think she had worked on it for about a year or two at that point, but she brought the game and it went over really well. A lot of people really had a great time with it. I watched it a little bit and I had some thoughts and notes, and she sent me a version of the game that she had revised due to the playtesting feedback a few weeks later. So that was how I met her, how I got my exposure to Apiary, and how I soon after really found that I love the game. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm also curious, at those kind of events, is there something in particular that you look for in designs that catch your eye? Because I'm sure you see so many submissions. Is there any commonality? Is there anything that, that experience the players have that you can distill, that you look for when you're picking a design?
I think we might have
Jamey.
We might have lost Jamey.
Oh no, my question destroyed his internet.
Your question was too important.
Question. Yeah, because part of it's intangible, seeing how are they immersed in the magic circle of the game. Yeah.
Sorry, could you say your answer again?
Okay?
Your internet cut out.
Yeah.
And then it cut up and you said it really quickly. No, you're totally good. If you could just say your answer again, that'd be great.
Folks, we do record this live on Twitch, folks. So this is what happens sometimes, but we're okay. Yeah, Jamey, if you don't mind answering that question, that'd be great.
Yeah. So when I'm watching people play games where I don't know much about the game, I'm more watching people than the games themselves. I'm watching, are people laughing? Are they smiling? Are they intensely looking at their player mats or the board, or are they checking their phones? Are they kind of checking out? Does it seem like they're questioning a lot of things? So I'm looking at the people, and I'm also looking at least a little bit the user interface of the game. Like, can I understand a little bit of what's going on by just looking at what I can see on the table? Yeah. I don't expect to understand everything from that, but usually at design day in particular, I drift around and I spend like 10 or 15 minutes every table just trying to absorb what's going on and seeing how people are feeling about it. And we also ask for people to rate the games that they play at design day. So I often take those impressions and then I compare it to what people actually seem to really enjoy at the end of the day.
That's awesome. I love that little advice of looking at the players as opposed to looking at the game. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Just one quick tidbit. I was very fortunate. Jamey had brought me out to Stonemaier Design Day a couple of years ago, and it's one of my favorite experiences I've had in the gaming industry because, number one, I got to go to St. Louis for the first time in my life, which was great. And I'd mentioned this. I talked to, you get to know people at the playtest event, a lot of locals, and I got to know a lot of locals there, and you have a really wonderful scene out there, Jamey. Just very, a lot of great gamers, very kind, they're welcoming, and to be able to see a lot of these games, taking shape was a really cool experience. So thank you again for bringing me out there. And also, for the first time, I got to try toasted ravioli, which was delicious. So y'all do it right in St. Louis.
Sounds really good.
I thought that was a game when you were first. I was like, what game is that?
It totally should be a game.
Dude, me too.
I was like, I've never heard of this one.
Why wasn't that on our top 10 food themed games?
I'm like,
that
I
sounds
immediately
delicious.
started Googling. I'm like, what? My Stonemaier research has been just sorely misplaced.
That's the secret 17 Stonemaier game.
Yeah.
That's what's in the closet behind you.
There you go. Someone had an interesting kind of follow-up question in chat, which was, your answer was for what you look for when you're seeing a playtest in person. Is there anything you look for when you receive a design on paper? Is there any way that a design can stand out on paper? Because I know from my experience, it's really hard to read about a game and understand what it feels like. So is there anything that you look for that, can help you parse a game when you see it on paper and decide that it's going to be good on the table?
There isn't. It's a great question. I don't think there's a magic answer to it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Just I guess looking behind the scenes at our process, we have this form that you fill out that mostly just determines if your game is the type of game that we're looking for. Things like, does your game play up to 5? Have you play tested it up to 5 players? Because that's a hard limit. We don't publish any games that only play 3 or 4 players, for example. And then my coworker and co-founder Alan reviews the submission, and this is where you kind of have to have a little bit of magic in the way that you describe your game.
Sure.
And I think the best way to do it, the best way I've seen, maybe kind of 2 things. One is to not try to sell everything about the game, rather sell between 1 and 3 hooks, things that might really hook someone in. Because if I don't know, if you make that list too long, then nothing's going to stand out. If you maybe make it too short, that may not seem like enough, but I would say 2 to 3 things that are big hooks. And it is always helpful for, Alan always tells me this, when someone is open to filming a few minutes of gameplay, like show us 3 turns of the game. And on the video, if you're comfortable on video telling us what the hooks are, that's fine. You don't even have to put your face on the camera if you don't want to do that. You can just show us the game on the table. But watching a game in motion can often give us a better idea, or it definitely can give us a better idea of how it plays than through those 3 lines, or even from a rule book. Because if we're getting 50 submissions a month, we're not reading all those rule books. We're using other filters along the way.
Yeah, of course. That's a great answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And one last question maybe from chat, if we have time, Ruel?
Yeah, well, why don't we take one more question, and then we'll be on our way.
Sure. I just wanted to ask this. Jamey from chat says, on average, how long does a game take to fully playtest? I think that's an interesting question. It's obviously impossible to answer because every game is different, but I do think that peek behind the curtain of that process can still be interesting. So if you have anything to add about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, it depends on the game. But I'll use some examples. Like for Apiary, Connie was playtesting it, I think for about a year before she submitted to us. And then during the development process for it, I think we went through around 5 waves of blind playtesting. And along the way, I was playtesting it locally and playtesting every iteration of the game. I think that was around 18 months of playtesting that we put into Apiary. It might have been
In
a little bit
addition
shorter.
to
maybe
that
a
year
little-
that Connie did, or wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
that's
After we
wild.
accept a game, there's still a lot of work goes into it. And we look for designers like Connie who are willing to actively work with us. The designer isn't just handing it off to us and we just take it from there. The designer knows the game better than we do. So I want to work with the designer and find people who want to do that. Expeditions took longer. I thought Expeditions would, since it's the sequel to Scythe, I thought I'd wrap it up in a few months, but it took like 2.5 years to go through all the play testing for that one.
Wow.
So yeah, it depends on the game, but usually it takes a while.
Amazing.
Awesome.
That's really cool. I feel like that's
we
a
could
lot
keep going,
different
but I
from-
don't.
Yeah.
from a lot of other publishing houses too, where it's, a lot of them are just like, no, we're going to put our spin on it, and that's it. And you're going to have to just say yes and accept it. I love that you keep the designers fully involved and want it to remain
that's awesome.
their creations, right? Just with the little tweaks to make it that little Stonemaier flair.
Exactly. Well, Jamey, thank you again so much for joining us today here on the R&R&R show. Thank you for sharing your insights, and it was just a joy to be able to talk to you again, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, it was great to meet the two of you. Ruel, it's great to see you again. And Ruel, you might have actually been at the design day that Connie was there. I can't remember exactly.
Oh, cool.
Really?
I think it was the first one after we had to not do one due to the pandemic. So you might have been there when she was there.
I'm going to have to,
but yeah, it was
now that
wonderful
you
to
say
see
that,
her.
Jamey, I'm going to go look at my photos from that event, and maybe...
You had the hot scoop.
Yeah.
And
I
did
It was
I
in
knew
the
it.
corner of the room.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm totally looking at my pictures after this. Jamey, thank you again.
My pleasure.
And thanks to sponsor of the show, Arcane Wonders. And now, folks, if you'd like to watch a bit of the extended edition of this episode, you can go on ahead and follow that link that's on screen right now or down in the show notes. Oh, so much more stuff happens, folks. Lots of chit-chat, lots of technical snafus. You can watch Ruel suffer through it, and you get to see my top 10 Stonemaier games and Jamey's top 3 Arcane Wonders games. Who knew? Lots of exciting stuff.